the sea wind was as if it could scratch a person's face. Lin Feng stood on the broken code in the village, looking down at the leaking small broken boat under his feet, filling his stomach with anger. He just returned with a little fish on line, but before he could sell it, he was taken over by the rich and wealthy men of the country. Yeah, isn't this Lin Wuchai? Why did you take a few more half-dead fish to prepare to feed the dog? The guy with his head was named Luowen, wearing fancy silk clothes, and a blind blue stone around his neck, smiling so hard that he deserved a beating. Several followers behind him also started to cheer, laughing so hard that they leaned back and forth. Lin Feng clenched his fists and stared at them with gritted teeth. It's all about you, it's far away. I'm pretty big. Luowen walked 2 steps closer, stretched out his finger and poked Lin Feng's chest. Just like you, do you want to make a name for yourself in this village? Make a dream. Otherwise, I'll give you a few copper plates and go to polish my shoes. What if I do? Roan, don't be too far. Lin Feng was so angry that his face turned red, but he knew that he could not beat this group of people, so he could only endure it. Who in the village didn't know that Luowen's family had money and strength, and even the village chief had to give them face? Over points? Is this called over points? Then I'll show you another point. Luowen shrugged his hand, and a follower kicked over the fish basket that Lin Feng had just rolled up, and the fish scattered all over the floor, and was trampled to pieces. You! Lin Feng's eyes were almost blue, but he was alone and didn't dare to move at all. He could only look at the group of people and laughed and walked away. The person on the code was so enthusiastic that no one dared to help, and they all rushed to the front. Lin Feng squatted down and lifted the trampled fish on the ground, and his brain was full of humiliation. He hated that it was useless, hated that he was cruel, hated that he could only be bullied in this Pohan village. At this moment, a wave slashed over, rolled up a group of broken things and smashed them directly to the head of the code. Lin Feng glanced at it and found that it was wrapped in a piece of rag, which looked quite heavy. He walked over and picked it up, and shook it and saw that there was a yellow sheepskin paper inside, half burnt, but there were some skewed lines on it, with a few strange symbols marked. What's this? Lin Feng glanced at his eyebrows and looked carefully, noticing that it looked like a map with a few vague words written on it, the Eye of Storm, and forever. Baozong? Lin Feng's heart thumped, and the words spoken by the old man in the village suddenly popped up in his brain. It is said that this eccentric treasure hidden deep in the sea, which can make people rich overnight and become a domineering person. But there was constant storm in that place, and no one dared to go, and no one who went could come back. No matter whether it is true or not, I'm so angry. Lin Feng bit his teeth and held the sheepskin paper in his hand. There was only one thought in his brain: if he could find Baozong, he could slap Roan's helping face so that they knew they were not a waste. However, it's not possible to rely on yourself alone. The first thing Lin Feng thought of was the old sea wolf. The old man was a legend in the village. He said that when he was young, he was a scoundrel and had never seen any wind. Although he was retired, his brain was full of experience in sailing and gossip about treasures. That night, Lin Feng went straight to the small dilapidated house where Lao Hailang lived. Knocking the door, he was greeted by a heavy smell of wine. Old Hailang sat naked in a pile of broken fish nets, holding a bottle of wine in his hand, and was drinking. His face and his neck were thick. Boy, why did you come here to fuck me in the middle of the night? Are you caught stealing fish again? The old sea wolf looked at him squintly, and his voice sounded like it was sanded with sandpaper. Old man, I found something, please help me see. Lin Feng didn't say anything, but directly opened the sheepskin paper and slapped the table. The old Hailang glanced at it, his eyes changed instantly, and the wine bottle almost fell to the ground. He grabbed the map, looked closer and looked carefully, muttering in his mouth, this mark, this line, damn, this is really a hidden treasure picture of the Eye of Storm. Really? Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Where's that treasure hiding? Can I find it? Look for a shit. Old Hailang slapped the table and stared at him. Do you know where the Eye of Storm is? The sea area has 365 days a year, and 300 days a year. 9 out of 10 people who have been there can't come back, and the rest is also crazy. You are so broken, you will die if you go. Lin Feng heard it and felt a little nervous, but he still said hard, I don't care. If I don't go, this person will have to be stepped under my feet. I'm willing to die at the sea, and I don't want to be laughed at by someone alive. The old sea wolf stared at him for a long time, and finally sighed, okay, a little brat, I have a bit of a rashness. But I can remind you that finding Baozong is not just a storm. There are not only storms on the road, but also those guarding Baozong, all of whom are cruel and ruthless. If you really want to go, you have to learn some real skills first. Then teach me. Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and Lima chased and asked. It's not impossible to teach you, but you have to listen to me, you can't be blind. Old Hailang pointed to the nearest mark on the map. This place is not far away, so it should be the first trace. You try the water first and come back alive before telling you. Lin Feng was like garlic, and his brain was full of pictures of him slapping Ron on the face after finding Baozong. He immediately decided and set out the next day. However, he is not good at all, and the ship is still a broken dump and can fall apart at any time. So I wanted to go, but he found Xiaoya. This girl is a well-known boat repair expert in the village. She can make any broken ship when she reaches her hands. Xiaoya, help me and accompany me to the sea. When Lin Feng found her, she was squatting on the head of the code to repair a boat, her hands were covered with oil. Going to sea? Just your broken boat, you have to sink before you leave the village. Xiaoya rolled her eyes, and the wrench in her hand did not stop. I'm not snatching fish this time, but I'm going to find Baozong. Lin Feng softened his voice and briefly explained the map. After Xiaoya finished listening, her eyes widened. Do you really think? It's not something you can play with when you hear it in that place. I know it's true. I know the danger, but if I don't try it, this slap will really become a waste. Lin Feng gritted his teeth, his eyes were determined. Xiaoya was silent for a few seconds, and finally sighed, okay, who will let me know you, such a fool? I will help you repair the boat, but you have to hear me, don't come. No problem. Lin Feng slapped his chest and relaxed his voice. Early the next morning, the two of them pushed the repaired small broken boat into the water before dawn. Although the ship is still broken, at least it doesn't leak. Xiaoya also added a block of temporary sails to run faster. Lin Feng held the map and stood at the head of the ship to guide the way, while Xiaoya was responsible for the helm. It wasn't long before the weather went out to sea, and the sky began to change. The sea, which was originally calm, gradually rolled up a wave of waves, and the wind became more and more fierce, scraping on the face like a knife. Lin Feng, if we don't have a fight this day, should we go back? Xiaoya raised her eyebrows and looked up at the sky above Yuyun. No. The first point is right in front, you can't go away halfway. Lin Feng gritted his teeth, his brain full of Luowen's ridiculous face. He could never go back like this, otherwise he would not be able to lift his head. As the sound fell, a huge wave slammed over and the boat was almost overturned. Xiaoya grabbed the rudder tightly and shouted, "You're crazy. This is a sign of storm, we have to hide." Lin Feng didn't say anything, staring at the sea, and suddenly there was a strange feeling in his heart. It seemed that something was telling him that the center of the storm was not here, but to the left. He didn't know where this feeling came from, but it was very strong. Go to the right. Go to the right. Lin Feng suddenly shouted. Are you sick? The wave on the right side is bigger. Xiaoya was so anxious that she was furious. Believe me once. Lin Feng yelled back, his voice full of certainty. Xiaoya gritted her teeth, but still heard him, and forced the boat to the right. As a result, not long after the sea on the left suddenly rolled up a huge wave, 3 or 4 meters high. If it hadn't turned, the ship would have been shattered. Damn! How did you know? Xiaoya was so surprised that she couldn't even put her mouth on her face. I don't know, I just feel it. Lin Feng was also confused, but he didn't have time to think about it because the wind had already come. For the next hour, it was simply a slaughter. The boats flew up and down in the waves and could fall apart at any time. Lin Feng and Xiaoyao were at the helm and pulled the sail, and their voices were shouting. The waves smashed one by one, and the ship was beaten to the side several times. If Lin Feng hadn't told him where he could hide, they would have capsized. Finally, after the last big wave passed, the sky lit up and the wind became smaller. Lin Feng sat on the boat, moistening and panting like a dog, but his eyes were filled with excitement. Ha ha! I'm not dead. I'm here. He jumped up suddenly, yelling at the sea, as if he had shouted out all his treasures for the past few years. Xiaoyao was too tired, but looking at Lin Feng like that, she couldn't help laughing. You guy is really a little capable. Lin Feng grinned, took out the map and looked at it. The first mark was not far ahead. He pointed to a small group of reefs on the sea and said, "It's there. Let's go and take a look." The boat was approaching the reef group, and the forest bounced into the water and swam past the largest reef. Sure enough, a mark was found on it, exactly the same as the symbol on the map. He reached out and touched it, and there was a small groove under the reef, with a stone slab engraved on it. Finish. Found it. This is the first line. Lin Feng held the stone slab, and his hands were shaking. He knew that this was just the beginning, but at this moment, he finally felt that he was not a waste, but a person who could challenge his fate. Lin Feng snatched his head, but grinned, "If you don't know, you have to try it. I've been storming all the time, can I still be troubled by such a small matter? Let's go back to the village, ask Lao Hailang, and then continue to do it." Lin Feng stood on the reef, holding the stone slab with strange symbols in his hand, his heart beating like a drumbeat. His body was wet, and the sea water was so painful in his mouth, but at this moment, he could only feel his whole body burning. Just then, the scene was stormy and almost gave him and Xiaoya his life, but they survived and found the first trace. This feeling is more pleasant than anything else. Hey, why are you fucking me stupidly? If you don't go back to the boat, the waves will have to be slapped again. Xiaoya shouted on the boat, still holding the broken rudder in her hand. Her face was covered with sea water, and her hair was sticking into a group. It looked like a wolf was so stunning, but she couldn't hide a smile in her eyes. "Here you come." Lin Feng grinned, holding the stone slab and pierced into the water, swimming back to the boat. He climbed onto the deck of the boat, sat down directly, gasped heavily, and put the stone slab in front of Xiaoya. "Look, what's written on it? Why can't I understand a single word?" Xiaoya looked over and looked at it, squinted her eyebrows and said, "This is not the word we have here, it looks like an ancient symbol. I can't tell you, so I guess I have to go back to the village to ask Lao Hailang." She turned it on and reiterated, "But you think you are a real evildoer. If you hadn't heard of you, we would have been beaten to pieces by the wave." Lin Feng slammed his brain and couldn't tell what was going on. "I don't know either, but there was a sudden voice in my brain telling me we're safe. Maybe God saw that I was too fond of it, so he opened a small slap for me. Come on, I'm sorry." Xiaoya rolled her eyes, stood up and clapped her hands. "The wind is a little bit small, let's go back tightly. This broken ship is really apart when it is waved by a few more waves." Lin Feng was at the head, put away the stone slabs, and helped Xiaoya pull the sails. The boat swayed and drove towards the village. Although the storm just now passed, there were still quite a few waves on the sea surface. Whenever the hull swayed, Lin Feng felt that he was ignited in his heart. Fortunately, it was incredible. After most of the time of sailing, the coastline far away was already visible. "It seems that the weather is good today, and I can definitely dash." Lin Feng didn't finish speaking, suddenly his eyes froze and he pointed to the sea on the right. "Then there is a boat." Xiaoya looked in the direction of his finger and found that there were 3 black shadows on the sea far away. The hull was much larger than the broken ships of them. The ship was still hanging on a red flag with a ferocious fish on the flag. "That flag is not a ship from the village." Xiaoya's face changed, and her voice was lowered a little. "It looks like people from the Carr family. Why are they here?" "Carr family?" Lin Feng was stunned, and the news mentioned by people from the village appeared in his brain. He told me that this helper kept the secret of the sea for generations and specialized in fucking those adventurers who tried to shoot treasures. He was cruel and ruthless, and even the old sea wolf would be embarrassed when they mentioned them. What are they here to fuck? You won't be here, right? Lin Feng said this, and there was a certain feeling in his heart. After all, he just picked up the hidden treasure map and took the first cable, and he always felt that this was not that coincidental. No matter what they are fucking, run away first. Xiaoya bit her teeth tightly, turned around suddenly, and tried to open the 3 ships. But their small broken boat was as slow as a crawling turtle. After a few minutes, the other party's ship approached. There were several men wearing black robes standing on the head of the boat, holding crossbows and long spears in their hands, killing the turtle. Stop the boat in front! Run again and shoot you to death. The man in the leader's voice was as cold as ice slags, and could be heard from the old distance. He wore a black helmet on his head, and there were several subordinates standing behind him, making people breathless. Stop it! They are not kind. Lin Feng gritted his teeth and cut his head, and his brain flew quickly. He knew that once he stopped, he probably had to explain his life. But if they didn't run away, they could not withstand the broken ship. Lin Feng, what should I do? I can't run away. Xiaoya was so anxious that she was sweating. She grabbed the rudder tightly, and her voice was a little terrifying. Lin Feng bit his teeth tightly, and suddenly remembered the trick taught by Lao Hailang in his brain. He said to Xiaoya in a low voice, "Don't panic, listen to me, open to the reefs on the left. The terrain is in a mess, and their big ships cannot enter. We can drag some time." Xiaoya heard it, her eyes lit up and she pointed, "Okay, I'll hear you." The boat turned suddenly and rushed towards a group of reefs on the left. The 3 large ships behind were indeed blocked by the reefs and slowed down, but they still did not give up. The people on the boat began to shoot arrows, and the arrows flew over Lin Feng and Xiaoya's tops. Several were directly inserted into the hull, which made Lin Feng's heartbeat almost stop. Damn, this bastard is really a terrible move. Lin Feng hid behind the side of the ship, and was so angry that he was so angry. He looked out and saw the guy with a helmet on the other side's boat staring at them coldly, his eyes like a poisonous snake, and he felt a sense of cruelty that he would not stop killing them. Lin Feng, the reef group is almost at its peak. What should I do next? Xiaoya shouted, his voice full of anxiety. Behind the reef group is a sea surface. Once they enter this boat, they will definitely be caught up. Lin Feng was in a group, but a strange feeling emerged in his heart. He closed his eyes, felt it quietly for a moment, then suddenly squinted his eyes, pointing to an inconspicuous little water ahead, saying, "Go to that side. Hurry! Are you sure? That place is as narrow as a barb. Can our ship pass?" Xiaoya looked suspicious, but her hands still turned around in hearing. "Believe me, it's okay." Lin Feng gritted his teeth, his voice full of certainty. The boat slammed into the narrow waterway, and both sides of the hull were scraped by the reefs and could overturn at any time. It was so strange that the other side's big ship could not enter at all, so they could only stare at the outside. Lin Feng looked at the anxious and frustrated look, and felt relieved. "Ha! Can't catch up, right? Come on, bite me." Lin Feng shouted in the head of the other party's ship, his breath was so loud. "Boy, don't be too proud. How far do you think you can run? No one can escape from the palm of the Car family in this sea area." The man with the helmet sneered, slapped his hands and stopped the boat, as if he didn't plan to chase him. "Tisk, harsh mouth." Lin Feng curled his lips, but he felt a little uneasy in his heart. This helper is obviously not an ordinary scoundrel, and it is quite difficult to come. But now, they have always left the other side behind. The boat dripped from the other end of the waterway and continued to drive towards the village. But before he ran far, Lin Feng suddenly heard a click sound coming from the bottom of the ship, and then the hull shook violently and began to tilt toward one side. "It's bad. The bottom of the ship is cracked." Xiaoya's face changed drastically. She ran to check it out. She found that the bottom of the ship was scraped open by the reef just now, and the sea water was pouring into it. Damn! Why is this broken ship not built? Lin Feng jumped out of his foot in a hurry, grabbed a broken wooden board and started to plug the leak, but the water flowed too fast and couldn't be blocked at all. Lin Feng, it can't be blocked. If we don't find a place to dock, we have to feed the fish. Xiaoya shouted with a rag to plug the loophole. Lin Feng bit his teeth tightly, stared at the sea, and an inexplicable straightforward feeling appeared in his brain. He closed his eyes and felt it for a moment, then suddenly pointed to the front right, then. There is a small island, let's go. You are here again? I don't think you will cheat me, right? Xiaoya was suspicious, but she still heard him and forced the ship to turn it in that direction. Sure enough, not long after, a secret island appeared on the far sea surface, covered by a fog, and at first glance it could not be discovered. Lin Feng and Zayaf tried their best to put the ship on the shore, but there was too much water at the bottom of the ship, and as soon as they stopped, they broke up and the deck collapsed halfway. Damn, I'll survive. Lin Feng was panting like a dog on the sand, and he was exhausted from exhaustion. Xiaoya was not much better either. She sat beside her and gasped, her hands were covered with blood blisters grinding from rowing. This island looks not simple. Xiaoya took a break and looked around. She found that the island was dense with trees and could still hear some strange sounds, like birds screaming or some wild beasts growling. Lin Feng also got up and patted the sand on his body. No matter whether it is simple or not, find a place to repair it first, and then check if there is anything to eat, your stomach will be almost flat. The two of them dragged their tired bodies and walked into the island not far away. They found a flat rock wall with some symbols engraved on it, which looked very similar to the one on the stone slab in Lin Feng's hand. Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and he took out the stone slabs to compare them. He found that the two were exactly the same, and there were even a few lines of untied lines on the rock wall, like extensions of the map. Damn! This is a new thread. Lin Feng was shaking his hands, and turned his head to Xiaoya. It seems that this island is not chosen by chance, it must have something to do with Baoshi. Xiaoya was slightly slapped, but her eyebrows still couldn't open. There is a rope, but our ship is gone. How can we go back? And Carl's helper probably hasn't given up yet, so he might just wander around the nearby sea. Lin Feng gritted his teeth, his eyes full of determination. If you don't have a ship, just create one. If Carl dares to come, I will dare to do it with them. I'll find this treasure. Speaking, he lowered his head and continued to study the symbols on the rock wall, and a stronger aspiration ignited in his heart. At this moment, a low growl suddenly came from the forest of trees around the world, as if something was shocked, and the sound became closer and closer, making people's skin numb. Lin Feng held the wooden stick tightly in his hand, staring at the direction of the low-roaring forest in the deep forest, and his heart beats as fast as a drumbeat. Xiaoya next to her also nervously, holding a thick branch in her hands, her voice softly, this sound, isn't it a wild beast, right? Can we withstand a small body? No matter what it is, it will be done when it comes. Lin Feng bit his teeth tightly, his mouth was hard, but his heart was bulging. He lowered his head and glanced at the stone slabs in his hand and the symbols on the rock wall, and flew quickly in his brain, this place obviously has something to do with Baohu. If he was scared, wouldn't his previous efforts be in vain? Just as he was thinking, the low growl suddenly became closer, and the tree was filled with a swish sound, and then a big thing suddenly shook out. The thing was 2 meters tall, with black and gray hair, pointed fangs in its mouth, and red eyes like 2 groups of fire, killing a giant sea wolf. Damn! What's this thing? Lin Feng took a step back in surprise, but the sand slipped under his feet and almost fell down. Xiaoya reacted faster, and directly pressed the branches in front of her and shouted, "Don't be stunned, run!" But the sea wolf was so fast that it was gone. It roared and rushed over. Its paws shook and brought a fishy wind. Lin Feng gritted his teeth and hid, slapped his claws directly on the rock beside him, and the stone chips flew out, smashing a pit. Running is a big deal. Where can we run at this speed? Lin Feng roared, in an inexplicable outlook of his brain. He glanced at Seawolf's action and found that although this guy was very powerful, he seemed to be a little slow to turn around. He yelled at Xiaoya, "Run towards the tree forest on the left, turn around the trees, and hold it." Xiaoya was stunned, but she didn't ask much, and she pointed to the left. Lin Feng raised a stone head and slammed the hair into the Seawolf's brain, and shouted in his mouth, "Come on, Shuzi, look at you here." The Seawolf was stunned by the smashing, roared angrily, and then snarled towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng's heartbeat was almost blowing, but he still ran towards the other end of the forest. He ran and used his direct judgment of the Seawolf's movements to avoid the attacks several times. Xiaoya cooperated beside her and threw a few stones to attract attention from time to time. The two of them were dealing with the monster in the forest. "Lin Feng, this is not an option. We have to try to kill it." Xiaoya shouted with a heavy breath, her face covered in sweat. Lin Feng's brain flew quickly, and suddenly his eyes spotted a raised reef nowhere, and there were a pile of cracked branches beside it. He moved his heart and said to Xiaoya in a low voice, "I have an idea. You can move the pile of branches over and pile them under the reef, and move quickly." "What do you want to fuck?" Xiaoya was confused, but when Lin Feng looked calm, she didn't say anything. Lima ran over to take care of her. Lin Feng continued to lead the Seawolf to circle. His mouth was sloppy, deliberately angering it. The Seawolf was so angry that his eyes became redder, and his actions became more and more impatient, and he almost hit the tree several times. After Xiaoya piled up the branches, Lin Feng ran towards the reef suddenly, and shouted, "Prepare, listen to my signal." He rushed to the reef, avoided the Seawolf's snatch, and then jumped onto the top of the reef. The Seawolf saw the situation and directly hit the reef, making the stones shake. Lin Feng felt nervous, but he still gritted his teeth and shouted, "It's just now, it's a little bit." Xiaoya had already prepared a piece of flint next to the pile of branches. When she heard the sound of Lin Feng, she blew out sparks and threw them into the pile of branches. The dry branches suddenly burned, and the fire quickly rose. The Seawolf crashed into the fire, and the fur was instantly lit, making a ruthless roar, and fur rushed on the ground. "It's done!" Lin Feng jumped off the reef and retreated to a safe distance with Xiaoya. He watched the Seawolf rushing into the fire, and finally fell to the ground without moving, and there was a burnt smell in the air. "Damn, it's all done." Lin Feng sat on the ground, panting like a wind box, and was exhausted from exhaustion. Xiaoya was not much better. She sat beside her sweat and muttered, "What do you think about this brain? If you don't get angry, will we just fall asleep?" Lin Feng grinned and patted his chest, "I can't wait. I'm so desperate." The two of them rested for a while and confirmed that the Seawolf was completely exhausted, then they dragged their tired bodies back to the rock wall. Lin Feng picked up the stone slab again, compared with the symbols on the rock wall, and began to spell the ropes in his brain. The symbols were swaying like part of a map, pointing to deeper seas, and there were a few blurred words engraved on the rock walls, like storm core. It seems that Baozang is in the place where the storm is the most violent. Lin Feng said in a low voice, his eyes flashing, "We have to tighten the boat and then walk forward." "Repair the ship? How do we repair the tools?" Xiaoya looked around and found that although there was a wooden head on the island, they didn't even have a knife in their hands. "If you don't have a tool, you have to think of a way." Lin Feng gritted his teeth and suddenly remembered some of the local methods taught by Lao Hailang. He pointed to the tree forest that was far away and said, "Let's find some solid vines first, tie the wood heads together, and make a simple raft. Although it's not so good, it can at least float." Xiaoya pointed at the head, and the two of them stood up and started to cut the wooden head and rolled the vines. After working hard for most of the day, they finally made a crooked raft. Although it seemed to be able to fall apart at any time, Lin Feng tried to push it into the water and found that he could barely float. "It's done! Let's go out with all your might." Lin Feng jumped onto the raft excitedly and called Xiaoya to come up together. But it was not far away just now, and the sea suddenly changed into the sky. The water surface, which was originally calm, began to sweep, and the sky was pressed far away, as if the whole sky was about to collapse. The sound became more and more sharp, the waves slapped at the waves, and the raft was shaking like a mountain bike. Damn! It's storm again? Why can't God always get along with us? Lin Feng gritted his teeth, grabbed the edge of the raft with both hands, and the feeling in his brain emerged again. He closed his eyes and felt it, and suddenly pointed to the front left. Go to that side. Hurry! Xiaoya didn't say anything and tried her best to make a move, and the two of them rushed towards that direction with the wind on their backs. But this storm was stronger than any previous one, with the waves 7 or 8 meters high, and the rafts were photographed apart several times, and the vines were broken apart for several times. Lin Feng and Xiaoya could only fight to the death. Lin Feng, this is not possible. No matter how big the waves are, we have to feed the fish directly. Xiaoya shouted so hard that her throat was covered with seawater, and her eyes were almost gone. Stop! Hold on! Lin Feng bit his teeth tightly and stared at the front. At this moment, an unprecedented huge wave passed from the front, reaching more than 10 meters high, as if the entire sea was about to overturn. Lin Feng felt a sudden heart, and there was only one thought left in his brain: this time is really over. Hold the raft tightly, don't let it go. He shouted, and hugged the main wooden head in the center of the raft with Xiaoya. The huge waves slapped down hard, and the raft was torn to pieces. The two were rolled into the water. The sea water was cold and biting, making Lin Feng almost suffocated. But at this moment of life and death, Lin Feng's brain suddenly exploded with unprecedented intensity. He was slamming in the water, feeling a whirlpool on the right, but there seemed to be a safe gap in the center of the whirlpool. He used the last force to pull Xiaoya to swim in that direction, and the two of them almost closed their eyes and forced themselves to rush over with water. Puff! After a while, Lin Feng suddenly emerged from the water surface, gasping for breath, and found that she and Xiaoya had really survived. Although the sea around is still wafting, it is much calmer than the huge wave area just now. He looked down and found that they were floating in a strange sea area, with an inexplicable air flowing around them, like a natural barrier that kept the strongest storm away. Damn! I'm alive again! Lin Feng couldn't help but yell. The sound was filled with the excitement after the disaster. Xiaoya was also gasping for a long time and muttered in her mouth, "You feel so fucking evil." The two of them supported each other and drifted for a while. They finally saw reefs emerging from the water anywhere. They swam over with great effort, climbed up the reef, and sat and rested. Lin Feng looked down and found that the stone slab in his hand was not broken yet. Although it was a little blurred by the sea water, the symbols on it could still be seen clearly. Wait, this place. Lin Feng was suddenly stunned, and compared the lines on the stone slab with the surrounding sea area in his brain, and suddenly realized that the shape of this sea area was almost exactly the same as the storm core marked on the map. Damn! We're here! Baozong is nearby. Lin Feng was shaking his hands, and turned his head to Xiaoya. Hurry, help me find it. There must be some trace around. Xiaoya clicked the head, and the two started searching near the reef. Not long after, Xiaoya suddenly shouted, Lin Feng, here. There is a mark. Lin Feng ran over and saw that he found an ancient symbol on the side of the reef, with a string of numbers and arrows engraved beside it, pointing to the bottom of the sea. Lin Feng's heart thumped, and Strongma took off his coat and took a deep breath. I'll go down and take a look, you're waiting on it. Are you crazy? I don't know what the situation is underwater. Xiaoya was so anxious that she was so anxious. It's okay, I have a straightforward feeling, believe me. Lin Feng grinned and pierced his head into the water. The underwater viewing was very low, and the sea water was biting cold, but Lin Feng felt diving downwards. Sure enough, a secret cave entrance was discovered more than 10 meters deep, and the entrance was engraved with symbols exactly like on the map. His heart beat faster and knew that this must be the entrance to Baozong. But the oxygen was almost gone, so he had to float up first. Finally found. The entrance is underwater. But at this moment, a sound of a boat storm suddenly came from the sea far away, and then several familiar big ships appeared on the video. The ship was surrounded by a red shark flag, and the guy wearing helmets, the people from the Carr family. Boy, you run very far away. Unfortunately, you still can't escape from my palm. Carl stood at the head of the boat, sneering at Lin Feng and Xiaoya, his voice full of killing. With a blow, several dozen subordinates behind him stood up and opened a crossbow, pointing the arrow straight at the two. Damn, why is this helper coming again? Lin Feng gritted his teeth and felt agitation in his heart. He and Xiaoya are now exhausted and are on the reef, so there is no place to run. Lin Feng, what should I do? They are crowded, how can we fight? Xiaoya asked in a low voice, full of anxiety. Lin Feng flew quickly, staring at Carl, and a crazy idea suddenly appeared in his brain. He said to Xiaoya in a low voice, "Don't panic, listen to me, we have to pay a prize." He stood up suddenly and yelled at Carl, "Hey, Shuzi, wanna kill me? Come on. I'm here, and the entrance to the Zodiac is here. If you have the ability, come down and snatch it." Carl's eyes turned cold, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "You little brat, you're quite tough. But do you think I'll go into the water? Move your brain. Since the entrance to the zombie is here, it's not a waste if you kill me slowly after you look for it." After saying that, he slapped his hand, his bow and crossbow were scattered, and the arrows shot towards the reefs like rain. Lin Feng felt nervous and pulled Xiaoya to hide behind the reef. The straightforward feeling in his brain exploded and told him the arrowhead. He said to Xiaoya in a low voice, "If you hear me, dive to the right and hide under the water." Xiaoya gritted her teeth and pointed, and the two of them pierced into the water at the same time. The arrows were flying over the skin, causing a string of water to spread. Lin Feng pulled Xiaoya under the water, and found a piece of underwater reef to hide, and temporarily avoided the attack. But he knew that this was just a right plan. Carl's helper clearly did not intend to let them go. Although he found the entrance to the zombie, if he had no life, everything would be useless. He closed his eyes, and the flying plate in his brain was calculating the next solution, and a ruthless heart ignited. "I have survived the storm, can I still be killed by this helper? No door!" Lin Feng held his breathing tightly under the water, and his brain flew quickly like electricity. He pulled Xiaoya and hid behind the reef. Through the blurred light and shadow of the water surface, he could see Carl's helper still on the boat. The crossbowman came back to watch and prepared another attack at any time. The sea water was so icy that Lin Feng was burning with a fire in his heart. The entrance of the trunk was just under his feet. "I have tried so much that I can never let this bastard get bad things. Xiaoya, you hear it well, we have to fight back." Lin Feng approached Xiaoya and gritted his teeth in a low voice. Although the sound was a little blurred by the water pressure, his language was full of ruthlessness. "They have a lot of people, but the boat is on the water, and we have terrain advantages underwater. We have to delay time and find opportunities to mess with them." Xiaoya narrowed her eyes. Although her face was white, she still pointed. "What to do?" "You said, I heard you." The inexplicable straightforward feeling in Lin Feng's brain emerged again, as if an invisible flow in the sea water was guiding him. He closed his eyes and felt it, then said in a low voice, "I dived down, and there was a small hole at the entrance that could lead to near the bottom of their boat. You were attracting their attention here, throwing a few stones and so on, making them think we were still on the reef. I walked over under the water and gave them a ruthless." "Are you crazy? Is it so hot that I slimmed down under the water?" Xiaoya was so anxious that she slammed her head, her eyes full of worry. "How? I'm so lucky, I can't hold it in my mind." Lin Feng grinned, patted Xiaoya on the shoulder, took a deep breath, and pierced her deeper into the bottom of the water. The sea water pressure was scraped on the body like a knife, so low that it could hardly see anything clearly, but Lin Feng felt straight and groped toward the direction of the entrance to the sacred. When he used his feet, his lungs almost exploded, but there was only one thought in his brain: he couldn't make Carl proud. Finally, when the oxygen was running out, he touched a narrow hole, and there were ancient symbols engraved on the rock wall next to him, which was indeed the entrance to the sacred. But he didn't have time to look in detail, and with direct guidance, he walked over from a secret waterway next to the entrance of the cave. The waterway was as narrow as a barb, and the reef thorns made his arms full of bloodstains, but he gritted his teeth and finally floated directly under the ships of Carl. He carefully poked out his head and found that he was in the shadow at the bottom of the ship, and the people above could not see it at all. Wait. Lin Feng sneered in his heart, wiped the sea water from his face, and began to observe the bottom of the ship. Although these ships are large, their base plates have aged in some parts and there are gaps between the wood heads. As soon as he turned his brain, he immediately dived, and rolled several sharp reefs from the bottom of the water, and then he straightened to find the weakest place at the bottom of the ship, so that he could use the stone to smash it. Bang! Bang! The sound was spread underwater. Although the sound was not loud, the wooden board at the bottom of the ship quickly cracked a few pieces of tissue, and the sea water began to sink in. Lin Feng knew that this kind of sluggishness would not sink the ship, but at least it would make them panic. He smashed the bottom plate of 3 ships, and until his arms were so sore that he could not lift them up, he quietly dived back to the waterway and roamed back to Xiaoya. When it surfaced, Xiaoya was panting heavily in her arms. When she saw him come back, her eyes lit up. "What are you fucking?" "I just threw the stones, and they really shot a wave at this side, almost avoiding." It's a good thing to fuck me." Lin Feng gasped, wiped his face, and pointed at the ship far away. "Look, they have water in the bottom of the ship. I guess they have to be busy repairing immediately, so there is no time to control us." Xiaoya looked in the direction of his finger and found that Carl's ships were beginning to be somewhat slanted. The people on the ship were forming a group, some were busy scooping out water, and some were shouting for loopholes. Carl stood at the head of the ship, his face was blue and his mouth was careless, but he couldn't take care of Lin Feng and the others for a while. "Damn, how did you do it?" "It's awesome." Xiaoya couldn't help but give her thumbs up and finally smiled on her face. "Don't be too early. They have to come and ask us for trouble when they have repaired the ship." Lin Feng gritted his teeth and stared at the direction of the entrance of Baozan. "Where now? We have to continue to get Baozan. As long as we take something, we will have the confidence to be strong with them." Xiaoya pointed her head, and the two of them held each other, took a few deep breaths, and dived into the bottom of the water again. This time, with a clear goal, the forest wind took the head and looked straight away from the undercurrent underwater, and soon dived to the entrance. Although the entrance of the cave is narrow, it can barely allow 2 people to pass through. They rushed in, and there was a pitch-black underwater passage inside. The stone walls on both sides of the passage were carved with ancient symbols, scattering a strange light. "Why is this place so evil?" Xiaoya muttered in a low voice, and the sound was trembling under the water. "Don't worry about evil or not, Baozan must be right in front." Lin Feng gritted his teeth, the oxygen in his lungs was almost gone, but he still rushed forward hard. Finally, a huge underwater cave appeared in the passage. There was a dry stone platform in the middle of the cave. On the platform was an ancient blue copper box. The surface of the box was engraved with symbols and an inexplicable force was scattered. "Damn, I found it." Lin Feng's heartbeat accelerated, and the horse rose to the surface, climbed onto the stone platform, and Xiaoya followed closely. The 2 of them were wet, panting like wind boxes, but their eyes were staring at the box, full of their faces. "Is this Baozan? Open it quickly and take a look," Xiaoya urged, her hands trembling a little. Lin Feng pointed at the head, reached out and touched the box, and found a strange lock hole on it, with a line of small words engraved next to it, like a reminder. As soon as he turned his brain, he took out the stone slab that had been holding in his hand, and compared with the symbols on it, he found that the shape of the slab was perfectly in line with the lock hole. "This thing is a key?" Lin Feng was shocked. He clasped the stone slab into the lock hole, turned it lightly, and only heard a click sound. The box opened slowly. A golden light burst out from inside, stabbing both of them in their eyes. When the light dissipated, Lin Feng looked down and saw that the box was full of gold coins, gemstones, and several weapons and armor that looked very awesome. There was also a roll of sheepskin paper next to it, with dense words written on it. "It's been released. I've really developed it." Lin Feng couldn't help but yell, grabbed a handful of gold coins, feeling like he was having a dream. Xiaoya was also stunned and muttered in her mouth, "How much is this worth? Can we buy the entire village, right?" But Lin Feng had not been immersed in the joy for too long. He picked up the roll of sheepskin paper and glanced at it a little, and his face suddenly changed. The above not only records the arrival of Baozong, but also reveals the secret of the Carr family. It turns out that they have protected Baozong for generations, not for protection, but for embezzlement. They killed countless treasurers, and even secretly controlled trade in the surrounding waters, plundered a large amount of wealth, and even the villagers in the village could not get rid of them. Damn, this helping bastard has caused so many people. Lin Feng was so angry that he gritted his teeth and his fists were clenched. He felt hot, and Lima said to Xiaoya, "These certificates must be taken out so that everyone can know their true faces. We not only want to hide them, but also destroy them." Xiaoya pointed her head and the two quickly put the things that could be brought in the box into a tarp bag, and then dived out of the water again. "Boy, have you found Bao?" "Unfortunately, I'm not lucky enough to enjoy myself." Carl's voice dripped into his ears like a poisonous snake. Lin Feng looked up and found that their ship had been repaired and was approaching. There were people standing on the ship, and the crossbow and the long spear matched them. "Damn, come again." Lin Feng gritted his teeth, and although he was silly in his heart, he was holding the cloth bag in his hand, and his bottom was a little bit full. His brain flew quickly and he felt like he came out again, telling him that although Carl was cruel, not all the people on the ship were iron plates. He yelled, "Carl, don't put it on. I know the broken things of your family, and the truth about Baozong is here. If you dare to move me, I will let everyone in the entire sea know your apology." Carl's face changed and his eyes narrowed into a slut. "Boy, you're stubborn? Do you think you'll scare me by taking a little broken paper? Who can still know if you kill you?" Kill me? Try it." Lin Feng sneered, deliberately lifting the cloth bag high and making a move to throw it into the sea. "There are certificates in this bag, and there is also a part of it. If you do it, I will throw it down directly. Don't think about it." Carl's eyes turned cold, but he didn't dare to move his hands, and he was obviously frightened by Lin Feng. Several subordinates on the ship also met each other, and some even started talking privately, such as having a little hesitation about Carl's orders. "Lin Feng, are you here in the recruitment bank? Do they really believe it?" Xiaoya asked in a low voice, full of tightness. "Believe it or not?" Lin Feng gritted his teeth, staring at Carl with his eyes tightly, and the straightforward thought in his brain told him that it was the best time to counterattack. He suddenly shouted, "Carl, don't you want to know how much wealth you have hidden? I tell you that with this guy, you can only drink soup forever. The truth about the hidden one is with me. Who can kill him, we will share it evenly." As soon as this happened, the people on the boat exploded in an instant. Several subordinates looked at each other, their eyes full of movement, and some even asked in a low voice, "Head, is Baozong really taken by this kid? We have been busy for so long, why haven't we been holding it for a while?" Carl's face turned blue and suddenly turned around and roared, "Close your mouth. Who dares to agitate, I will kill him." But his roar made his subordinates even more suspicious. Lin Feng looked at the timing and continued to challenge, "Did you hear it? He was afraid. Brothers, now he is against him. Everyone will share it together, and it is better to be a dog with him." "Damn it, I've done it." A subordinate suddenly shouted, drew his sword and rushed towards Carl. Several other people also followed suit, and the ship instantly formed a group. Although Carl is good at it, he is unable to use four hands with two fists and is quickly suppressed, and his face is full of incredible. "Ha, Shuzi, didn't expect it." Lin Feng couldn't help laughing and said to Xiaoya, "Hurry up, get ashore while we're going there, we have to run away." The two took advantage of the sisters-in-law and Carl and swam to a small island that was far away, and they finally left the danger. They were on the beach, gasping heavily, and watching the fight on the far boat. They felt relieved. Lin Feng, your brain is so fucking. Xiaoya couldn't help laughing and patted Lin Feng's shoulder. It's amazing to be able to challenge and leave. Wu Chai must be as smart as Wu Chai. Lin Feng grinned, lowered his head and looked at the cloth bag in his hand, his eyes full of struggles. But this is not over yet. We have to go back to the village and shake out the ruins of the Carr family, so that everyone can see who is the real waste. A few days later, Lin Feng and Xiaoya returned to the village with their treasures and certificates. They found the old sea wolf first and gave it all. After hearing this, the old Heilang's eyes were red. He slapped the table and said, "Damn, Carl is a bastard. I have known for a long time that they are not doing good things. A little brat, you do a pretty job. This time I will lift their bottom up with you." Under the leadership of the old sea wolf, Lin Feng made the secret of the Carr family public, and the evidence on the sheepskin paper was spread throughout the sea. The evil behavior of the Carr family quickly aroused the anger of the crowd. The surrounding gangs, the civilians, and even some noble tribes joined forces to completely suppress their strength. Carl himself was sold by his subordinates and ended up in a devastating situation. Lin Feng, the once-grown village, reorganized the village and built his own fleet with Baozong's wealth. Not only did he let the villagers live a good life, but he also became the overlord of the sea. Even the rich and wealthy men who once ridiculed him, like Luowen, could only come to Badong with a low head. Luowen, why don't you continue to call me to waste your hair?" One day, Lin Feng stood on the newly built code and looked at Luowen with a smile, his lingerie full of hype. Luowen's face was so blue that he smiled hard. Lin Daolai, in the past, I didn't see Mount Tai. You don't remember villains. I will give you a chance to serve you. Effective? Okay, go wipe the boat. Lin Feng smiled and let someone take him away. He felt very happy. Since this day, Lin Feng's name has become a legend in the sea area. He carried Xiaoya and Lao Hailang, drove the strongest fleet, and patrolled the sea. No one dared to underestimate this once dead wastewood. And whenever a storm comes, he can always find the safest route, like God is helping him. Lin Feng, what should I do next? I heard you in this sea area. Xiaoya stood at the head of the boat and asked with a smile. What should I do? Continue to find a treasure. There are still many secrets waiting for me to dig in this sea. Lin Feng grinned, looking at the sea level far away, his eyes full of struggle. The sea wind blew over, carrying the smell of scent, the sails rose high, and the smile of the forest wind blew on the sea. At this moment, he is no longer the wastewood of the village, but the Real King of the Sea.